Welcome to the SwimSwam podcast. I'm your host, Coleman Hodges. I'm joined today by SwimSwam co-founder, Olympic gold medalist Mel Stewart, and our special guest of the day, Olympic medalist, world champion, former world record holder. I mean, he's got pretty much every accolade in the books that you can imagine. Milo Cavic. Milo, how you doing, man?
Thank you, and thank you for that introduction. I'm all washed up now, but everything's good. I decided that we're gonna look for the good in everything in this whole situation, and I do believe that we've got everything that we need to get through this to be successful, and just to look for the positive in everything. So it's going. Yeah.
I know you're getting your coaching legs under you these days, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. But I want to start today off with your formative years. We've talked to a lot of SoCal natives recently, and I know you got your start in Irvine under Coach Dave Salo when he was the head coach at Irvine Nova Aquatics. Tell us about your swimming roots and how you got started in the pool.
Once upon a time, for those that live in Orange County, believe it or not, there was a time when there were many orange groves, and I moved to Tustin, which is the first city next to Irvine. I moved to Tustin in the early '90s from Anaheim, where I was born, and I just remember seeing just these fields and fields of orange trees just everywhere. And anyways, long story short. I started swimming like many people have, in Orange County, in California in general. When you fly and you see a whole lot of pools, the ocean's there, and you want to be water safe. So I got into that, and back when I was about 9 years old, my best friend was swimming at Irvine Novas, and for us to spend more time with each other, I joined the swim team, and this was at about the time when Vlade Divac was. He was playing for the Lakers, and I was kind of between playing basketball and playing swimming, and it was just something that I was just way more passionate about. Later on, fast forward just 10 years, swimming has always kind of been that place that I would go to answer questions, right? I'd have conversations with myself, and it was one place that I could always just kind of be creative, and it has always been my creative outlet. So, I was very, very fortunate to start swimming, in Southern California, and even more fortunate to find myself in Irvine Novas. It could have been any team, but I found myself there, and at the time, the prospect of swimming with Dave Salo meant nothing to me. Aaron Peirsol was there. There are quite a few big names that were at that club team that we never even really thought about. But growing up, people who grew up with me, they knew me as Michael. Growing up as a kid in SoCal with a weird foreign name. It wasn't all that easy, and I do remember, being bullied as a kid as a result of it, and as a result of that bullying, I kind of, my parents and myself, we just kind of transitioned me to the name Michael, which I used for many years growing up. But really, really pretty quickly on, I was taller than most. And within like a year and a half of starting, I broke like the Southern California age group records in the 1500 freestyle. So, when you
1500
doing some, what's that?
1500. Yeah. So just for one second, you were bullied. Were you not? Did you not develop until later in high school, or were you? Because you're a big guy. You're an intimidating guy. To meet you in person, it's like, this is a big guy. It's hard to imagine.
Well, bullying comes in different forms, and I would never make this the focal point of any one of my stories, but there were always bigger and badder kids, right? And yeah, growing up, I have to say, like, if I could go back to my childhood, like, I would be very unhappy to do it, just because, as growing up, there's a million questions and not one good answer until you kind of go through the hoops and kind of follow the path of life. But it wasn't always easy. I had this huge gap between my teeth. You didn't know whether to kick a field goal or smile back at me when when you saw me. and it was just a part of growing up, and fortunately for me, swimming was kind of one place where I proved to be relatively dominant early on, and it wasn't until about the age of 12 that I joined Brian Peirsol, who later on went to form his own team and coach at UCI. But Peirsol was there, and Amanda Beard. Amanda Beard had quickly gone to Dave Salo's group at the age of 12. So there was always just a bunch of just ridiculous athletes at that team, and I had the right mentors or the right idols along the way to kind of, and I saw them every day, which is kind of the coolest thing.
Were you the first in that crew to go to the Olympics in 2000?
No. So the year 2000, for those that don't know much about Dave Salo, but Dave qualified. He qualified 4 or 5 Americans to that team that year. It was Stacy Stitz, Aaron Peirsol, Jason Lezak, and I don't think he had any claim to. I don't think he had any claim to Amanda Beard. No, he didn't. She was already at Arizona. It could have been Scott Tucker. There was one other American swimmer, and as a result of this, he earned his spot on the team. Well, next to these American swimmers, there was another 4 or 5 foreign athletes, and there was one Turkish guy who was the athlete of the year, like when he was 16, Daria Biancaciu. He went to Michigan. There was this guy named Nick Shackle. He went to Auburn. I don't know if you know Nick. Yeah. There was Tucker there, and there was 2 other athletes, but all in all, I mean, man, like growing up and seeing some of these guys at the deck as a boy, and seeing them do what they were doing, like like I always had someone to take down.
But yeah, that's cool. But correct me if I'm wrong, Peirsol was 17 at the time. You were 16. So yeah, you were a 16-year-old experiencing the Olympic Games, and the Olympic Games is like a lot. It's what's it like when you're 16 years old and you go through that experience? I kind of look back at when I had a swimming school, and introducing kids that graduated swimming school to their first swimming race. They're just terrified, and they don't know why, until they do the race, and then they kind of walk out and they're full of smiles. They're just so happy. It's like, like you don't even need to ask them if it was that scary. Like they're elated. That experience for me, I knew realistically I wasn't going to do anything noteworthy other than, just kind of go and get the experience. Sometimes, it definitely helped me that I went through that fire early on. And I remember at that time swimming in a heat with my hero, which at the time was Mike Klim. And that was kind of cool. Like I remember this little Aussie boy, he asked me, he's like, what do you swim? And I said, well, I'm here to swim the 100 fly and the 100 back. He's like, Klim's going to kick your ass. I was like, wow. And it was just a little boy, but yeah, I think it's important to participate even when you're not going to win, and especially early on. I spoke about Nathan Adrian qualifying in 2008. Like the year before that, no one thought he was going to win or make that team. So, until you do, it's kind of a snowball effect toward your dreams. And the sooner you can kind of get over some of those fears and those big stage frights, the sooner you're going to liberate yourself and just do what you do.
So you go to, first Olympics, it sounds like you kind of had a grounded perspective on that. Was there do you have any notable stories about training with that group in Irvine, or a favorite story, a practice you remember? Anything specific? Because it's not every day that as a club kid on your regular club team, you're training with, 10 or 20 Olympic level swimmers.
Yeah. I got one story and it's kind of wrong, but you know what, Mel, you're going to appreciate this. You remember Ron Carnot?
Of course I remember Dr. Ron Carnot.
Dr. Ron Carnot. And this is a guy that always insisted on us calling him Dr. Ron, right? Doc. He had to be Doc. And I remember, Doc Ron, we would do dryland or do some running before we got in the water, and he had literally his climbing boots on. They weren't like Timberland kind of boots, but they were kind of like Timberland boots. And he would run in that park right next to the Irvine facility in his Speedo in those boots on. I don't know why that kind of stood out. There was another interesting character, and he was on the U.S. World University team, Chris Babylon. I don't know if you remember Chris Babylon. Yeah, and he had this huge beard, and as a kid, I was just looking at this guy like he's looking very Jesus-like, but he would always carry his equipment in like a Safeway or like a Ralph's bag, and I don't know why I remembered that. But all in all, like some of the things that I look back with just so fondly on was, waiting to age up to 13, 14 so that I could be, on the relay with Peirsol. There was another decent swimmer, Gani Shimura, and some of you may know Quinn. Quinn, he works at Finis right now. Quinn Fitzgerald. Like just aging up and being with these groups and setting national age group records in these relays was pretty huge. I remember us when Breathe Right first came out, we were wearing Breathe Rights on our noses and we colored it in black, and it was kind of our thing. But I look back and I think to myself, man, like we set a lot of records, we did a lot of really, really cool things, but really it's not the time you went, it's the time you had. And just being in a group with people that were like-minded and is focused, it was special. It's important to be surrounded by people that want what you want.
So, I mean, it sounds like you had a very positive club experience that ultimately led you to Cal Berkeley. What made Cal stand out for you?
Cal, I think it's pretty clear, why Cal and Stanford kind of, and of course Texas, but to a lesser degree, why they, they're so dominant in recruiting. What you get when you go to Cal is this world-class education. It was a team that, by all measurements, we had some of the biggest rock stars in swimming on that team when I joined it. I would even argue that we had more talent than Auburn did. But, one thing that, later on that I discovered that we didn't have was that I wouldn't say that we had the team culture or the synergy, which I later on found at different places, such as LSU. Earlier before that, at Michigan, when I revisited Mike Bottom, in Michigan after he left Cal. But it's really just the California weather, the education and the team, and just the quality of the team. For me, it was important to be with somebody who would understand me. I wasn't the easiest guy to deal with when I was a kid. I was, in many ways, I was arrogant, very, very selfish. I wasn't somebody that would have fit in just anywhere. And I truly believe and maintain to this day that I would have been kicked off of most collegiate teams just because I was that punk. And I'm not proud of that. But, it was a part of my process and a part of my upbringing and how my family, who's not American, brought me up. And there are good and bad sides to that. But I almost went to SMU, I've always loved Texas. I loved my experience in Dallas, and one of the reasons why I went on that trip there and almost accepted going there was because Lars Frölander was there just a couple years earlier. And when I went there, I discovered that this guy was, swimming, effectively swimming an hour a day and then spending an hour and a half in the gym. So he was more power and less swimming. Different paths. And I just didn't see myself as somebody that could follow necessarily in those footsteps. But yeah, all in all, I'm very, very proud and happy that I went to Cal. I'd do it again. I would definitely do it again. Just, I would have wanted to be a better teammate.
But yeah, you had Bottom, and Bottom is one of the most interesting outlier coaches. This guy thinks differently. Well, at one point I was talking to him and he's like, I used to do community theater. And I'm like, yeah. He goes, it's the exact same thing as swimming. And I'm like, what are you talking about? He goes, once you start, you can't stop. And he says, it taught me a lot about swimming. And so do you have any interesting Bottom stories?
Yes. I've got many interesting Bottom stories. No, I met Mike Bottom long before I was recruited. I was on some European tours at some meets, and at the ends of a lot of these European championship meets, they have these after parties, and and I would go to these after parties, and he would also go to these after parties. Whether it was to recruit or not, I can't say. We don't even need to go into that, but
we should hold up and just say this. If you don't know Mike Bottom, to know Mike Bottom is to love him, but also I think to epitomize him, we can probably agree on this. This guy comes from a place of non-judgment. No matter how weird or bad something is, he's like, it is what it is. He accepts it as experience. It's like he's a very non-judgmental person.
I'll say, like, my experience at Berkeley was not bad. It's just when you see how other teams had it back then, and even today, like it was quite a bit differently. And look, like we had some characters in the team, such as Anthony Irvine back then. He would never come to practice. Like he would never come to practice. And there were days when he may show up to practice, and when he did show up to practice, it was usually about, practice started at 1:15 and he would roll in about 1:30, and Mike would spend about 45 minutes trying to convince him to put his big toe in the water. And by the time he would do that warm up, he would do the main set, and then that would be it. And this isn't to cast a shadow on Anthony. Like, he did his best. With his challenges and his personality, like he just did his best. And with Mike, he was somebody who always just understood he can connect with anybody. And I don't know what community theater means, but he loves to give stories, and he loves to give speeches, and a lot of them are very, very relevant just because he's kind of been through it. And that's something that kind of spoke to me. Here's a guy that made the U.S. Olympic team that didn't get to go for political reasons. And he says that he's made it his life's mission to put people on Olympic teams. Now, it's a nice story. Did he potentially live vicariously through us? Maybe. What I think and what I thought was really, really good, and what I think is the value of swimming under somebody who's been there and done that, is that it can walk you through the hoops of things that are ahead of you. And again, there are way too many great coaches out there that never kind of made it on a high level in swimming. I'm not even saying that I'm going to be that good of a coach. Like, that's what I want to be, right? But a couple of the things that he was able to speak to is, he said, "Look, you want to be an Olympic champion?" I said, "Yeah, I do." He's like, "Well, I can walk you through it. I can talk you through it." And he's like, I can surround you with people that have been there and done that, and that could teach you things along the way. So, it's important to train with people that want what you want, there is a lot of value, which was the race club and working with people who had done things that you hadn't done. And again, a lot of these conversations would happen during lunch, while we're just kind of kicking it in the locker room and just BSing about anything and everything and anything and a lot of things that just don't matter. But you learn a lot from being around people that have done great things. And Mike Bottom was able to put me around people of that caliber. Later on, if we fast forward past, 2008, after the race club, I went to Europe for a couple of years, and I came back to Mike, and and Mike was in Michigan at this point, and I remember getting in the water in the tub after workout one day, and and everybody had already left. It was just kind of the pros, and the pros already left, and I saw Mike on deck, and I said, Mike, I got to ask you, man. You used to recruit the highest, the best athletes in the world. You used to recruit the best athletes in the world, and now you got no one. You got Connor Yeager, and all these other guys. You got I was like, I'm beating them in their own rate. I'm beating them swimming backstroke, and this wasn't just I really was just whooping them. And he just kind of stopped, and he looked left and he looked right. He's like, you're right. I'm not recruiting the kind of athletes that I recruited. But one thing that we do have is an effing culture. And there's no way I would have recruited you to Michigan if you were the way that you were back then when you were 18. And he's like, here at Michigan, we have a way of doing things, and you do it the Michigan way. And then he kind of finished. He said, watch, in the next 1 or 2 years, we're going to win the championship. And I was like, Mike, did you just not listen to what I said? You don't have anybody in this team. And he's like, watch. Sure enough, a year later, he won the championship, and I was in Serbia, and I called him. I was like, Mike, how did you do it? How did you do it? He's like, I got people to buy in, not to winning races, but to placing one spot better than they did the year before. And if you're in the B final, fight for 8th place. If you're 8th place in the A final, fight for 7th place. What he essentially did was he was able to create a culture to where they were doing it for each other, not for themselves. Whereas at Cal, I can honestly tell you that it was mostly there were specific individuals, and I'll say that I was one of them. I was in it for myself. I'm disappointed to this day that I never won an NCAA title in my own. The highest ever place was second, and again, this was a selfish Cavic that I was, and I wanted to win the title for myself and not for my team. And, I would like to think that I've grown a whole lot since then, but that is that spectrum of how it was at Cal, whereas we had all these, these athletes that were ready to go to the Olympics, and everybody was kind of wanting to perform for their own egos and not for the guys that are on the benches cheering for them, just because we did have quite a few guys that would never make it past college, and they were doing it for the right reasons, whereas we had a bunch of firepower and a bunch of superstars that were just doing it just to stroke their own egos.
So having heard all of that, I have to bring up 2008, pre-2008, when I saw you on deck. This was with Swim Network. This was this little swimming news site that USA Swimming was doing, and I did it for fun, but I just wanted to be close to the pool, close to the action. And, I've been around the block enough. I've rubbed shoulders with so many stars. Sometimes people stop you in their tracks. It's just a look in their eye. It's a tone in their voice. And you did. You stopped me in my tracks. And when you talked about it before, it was in Omaha, the pre-meet. And do you remember the conversation?
I don't specifically remember the conversation, but Mel, first of all, any pool you go to, they're going to let you in. They better let you in, right?
It's all good. It's all good. I'm getting into pools, but it's in terms of just engaging peers and people that are out there. You had an intensity about you, and you weren't really on my radar in terms of what was coming up that summer. And you let me know that I need to be on your radar. And I just remember watching. I was there. I watched in 2008. I was in the stands, and I remember being riveted by your performance. And it was, let's be honest, it's like the most watched race in swim, because that race was watched over and over and replayed over and over again. So you're a part of history in a unique way. That is, you got a unique piece of history there, buddy. 1 billion plus people have seen it.
Yeah. I thought about, like, one of the things that kind of motivated me growing up was the thought of legacy. What are people going to remember me for? And really, along the way, at least for me, visualization was a big part of my swimming experience. It was a big part of my life, whether I wanted to or not. Every single night, like, I saw the race, like how I wanted it to play out, and sure, going to the Olympics, you are going in with the goal of being an Olympic champion. For me, at least, I had already had 2 Olympic games under my belt before I had arrived in 2008. I was ready for at least the bronze medal in 2004. My bodysuit opened up on me at the 50-meter mark in 2004 in the semifinals. And, I was ready for that bronze medal. And again, just the frustration of being first, at the 50-meter mark of that 100 race, and then emerging at the 65, 7th, right? In the best part of my race, like, this is where I should have extended my lead. And I went from first to 7th within those 15 meters. A lot of compounding disappointments, it kind of plays into motivation. And going into 2008, I knew that in 2000 I was just going to break that ice. In 2004, I was ready for the medal. And for me in 2008, it was like, all right, darn it, like, this, it's got to happen now. Like, if not now, when? So yeah, I think if you go in, I'm not sure who said it. It's something along the lines of, like, don't think. If you think you can, you can. If you think you can't, you can't. And there is no I'll try. There is no trying. You go for it. And that's exactly how I did. I knew that I had surrounded myself with all the right people. I had the right mentor. I had the right teammates. And if it was ever going to happen, it was going to happen then.
Force of will. Two of the greatest swims in swim history was the 100 fly final. In my book, I'm a flyer, so I love it, and I'm a little bit biased. Coleman's a flyer too, so he's biased. I don't know.
Out of curiosity, what's your second race? What was that? What was that second top race?
2,900 fly.
Oh, well, thank you.
Which was a great swim.
Yeah,
it's a great swim. You won the 50 fly. And then you came back in the 100 fly, and it was, it was a face-off. But those were two extraordinary races.
What people they don't take into consideration is the level of just the weight of the world. When you're not on the radar, it's easy or easier. And when the world is watching, you start thinking. Like, wow, like, your breathing gets heavier. Just a lot of things start playing out. And one of the cool stories, before the 2008 final, I was in the dining hall the night before the final, and you may recall that the finals were in the morning. And I was eating alone in the dining hall, and just eating, and just somebody tapped me on the shoulder, and I turned around, and it was Hugenbond. And Peter, he says, I know what you're thinking right now. And he said, stop it. I'm like, what am I thinking? he said, he said, you're thinking about, just how scary it's going to be tomorrow. And he's like, just know that, just remember why you're here. And I asked him, well, why am I here? He said, because it's fun. And that was probably the most important message that I had ever heard, from somebody, and it came at the exact right time. He said, you started swimming because it was fun. You kept swimming because it was fun. You kept going because the pursuit of this journey is fun, and just know that there are a lot of people that want to be in your spot, right? I remember the next day, there is, no matter who you are, there's this fear going into any huge final. There's doubt, and I remember Aaron Peirsol, he won the silver in the 100, I think it was the 100 back. And, you got to understand, like, this is my childhood friend. Like, I spent 7 years with this guy training in Irvine, and, I knew him, and he won the 100 backstroke, and I was going to the 100 fly, and he had already gotten his medal, and he was walking back to the team area. And, I came up to him to congratulate him, and I reached for the medal, and he slapped my hand. He's like, I'm not going to let you touch this. And I just kind of laughed, like, you kidding me? He's like, no, man. Like, letting you handle this is bonding with it. Go for the gold. And this story isn't talked about just because, Phelps is his teammate, and USA Swimming has a way of controlling culture and PR and again, what these national teams forget is the human element to all this. Peirsol was my childhood friend. When I ended up taking the silver, and the big controversy that erupted after that, Mike Bottom was bombarded with hundreds of emails of people attacking him for coaching somebody that is going against the United States, and there's a really, really popular story, and I'm not sure if it's true, but Frank Bush, there is a story that he was sent home in 2004 when his boys won the Olympic gold in the 400 freestyle relay. He cheered, he celebrated, and he was a U.S. Olympic coach.
I don't know if it's true, but it's definitely something we'll look into and try to find out.
Well, yeah, but and whether they admit it or not, like, there used to be a tension between American coaches on the U.S. national team coaching or supporting their own athletes, which Mel. Coaches, especially at that level, they're not just coaches. They're life coaches. They're father figures, and for
clinical
me,
therapist,
everything. What relationship therapists, like whatever, man. And Mike Bottom has never just been a coach to me. And anybody that's been at Michigan and even at Cal earlier on, in that Mike coached directly, like he's your father. He's my second father, and just for him later on in 2009 when he was on that U.S. team, I saw him. I hadn't seen him in a whole year. It was Rome. He was on deck, and I hugged him. And when I hugged him, he said, I can't be seen spending too much time with you. True story. So he pulled out his smartphone, which back then it was a Palm Pilot, I think, since iPhones were still, I think they had just come out. But he started flipping through photos of his daughters because and his wife, and just for me to see the family. And it's just kind of sad, but it's true. They don't want American coaches fraternizing or hanging out with or supporting the athletes representing different NOCs. So man, there's so much gray that people just don't even know about. But what kind of bothered me was just, the human is just the humanity of it. Like, the Olympics was initially, a festival to celebrate how far humankind has come. And all of a sudden they turn it into this national Olympic Committee war to see who's going to win, more medals. And, and I get that there's a huge value to that. But,
it's supposed to be in lieu of going to war. It's supposed to be about peace.
Yeah.
And it's brotherhood and sisterhood. We're down to less than a minute. So we're going to bring you back because you have way too much history, way too much experience. And we want to dive into all that. Just as a curiosity, closing, had you ever touched an Olympic medal as you were going up through development before your own?
I was lucky enough to be in Irvine, and when Pablo Morales had started pushing the monofin, and Pablo Morales in 1994, when I was 10 years old, he had walked onto the pool deck and was racing us. He told us the story. He was talking about the monofin, and he was even racing us underwater. We were doing like 50s underwater long course meters. I mean, I couldn't make a 50 at that time, but that was one of the great benefits that if you guys are listening out there and you got a little bit of money, invite somebody who's been there and done that to your team. At least through a Zoom call nowadays, invite them and have them talk to your team, and you'll be interested to discover that a lot of their human experiences are very, very different. Throughout this COVID period, I brought in about 9 Olympic athletes, and with purpose. Every one of those athletes, they had a trait that would relate to something or someone in the team, whether they're openly gay, or whether they were suicidal, or whether they were, you bring them on to show you that, I'm human, other than my swimming part, I've got feelings, I've got emotions, and, I'm a human being.
You've been listening to the SwimSwam podcast. Stay tuned for new episodes every week. You can take SwimSwam podcast on the go by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Look for links in the description below, and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more videos as well.